Sorry about that. I wanted to do a video basically on red bones because at the time people seem to not know the definition of it. So I included some screenshots of definitions of red bones as well as related definitions to red bones. There's a three-pronged reason why redbone is what it is. Because I've had in the past when I talk about red or reddish brown or red bones, people always have a mindset that red bone is actually specifically something very fair skinned that turns red in the sun. That is not quite the definition of red bone for three reasons. One, because red or red bone or reddish is going to be brown, skin tone, brown, thing specifically or red bone and complexion, in my opinion. Then on top of it, there's the whole part of the original definition of red bones. You see, red bones were given the name red bone in definition to describe basically, or well, to compare skin tone to basically like meat, basically. So when I say that, it's like a meat definition to red bone. Red bone is not um, basically fully done like brown skin people. And if you look at the complexion of a brown skinned person and you look at the complexion of someone who is a red bone, you will see that there's a difference just as if it would be for someone who is basically trying to describe a slight, well, not a slight, but a difference in saying they are lighter than average, basically. They're lighter than a paper bag, so to speak. But they aren't specifically like extremely different or extremely lighter than someone who is well done, basically. As opposed to red bone would be basically red at the bone, which is not completely like um undone or lighter basically, but it's lighter than someone who is of a brown complexion basically. On top of it, there's another definition and a reason why I feel red bone is what it is, and that's because of the fact that often people forget the definition dirty red. Dirty red is a definition to describe a red bone's complexion when they tan and their darkest hues. So basically, a person who is very light skinned cannot tan to a dirty red complexion. So it does not have to do with specifically the reddish complexion. Usually, like I have shown on my slide, you can see the difference in complexion for red boned women and red complected women is that they have a lighter hue when they aren't exposed to the sun, but when they are exposed to the sun, they get more of that darker hue to their complexion, and they have more of a brownish tone to their complexion. That's why they can turn more of a chocolatey complexion than rather a well, not I'm not saying like dark skinned people. I'm saying like a, well, should I use the term chocolate or more of a I thought chocolate was a pretty term because I've always wanted to be the color chocolate. Maybe more like Maybe more of an almond hue or like a cinnamon hue or something like that. But you get what I'm saying. There's more of a deeper hue with red bones when they tan, as shown here. Now the thing is with red bones is, like I said in the definitions and the descriptions that I show in the text, as far as the screenshots I've provided, you can see that the people who are considered red brown are a tinge darker than the ones who are basically caramel. But you see that people who are red bone and caramel are basically used interchangeably. And the reason that is because caramel complected people are usually able to tan just as deeply as a red bone. And many of the time, our complexions basically overlap. One may be, a red bone may be slightly darker naturally, but with just a slight amount of sun exposure, a caramel complected person will also reach that complexion and maybe even be darker. So many of the time with red bones and caramel complected people, they just overlap over and over again, basically, to the point where it's hard to tell them apart, one, and two, you know, people generally just will call them both red bone because they basically look very similar to each other. The truth is, though, many of the time with caramel complected people, they have a yellow undertone as opposed to a reddish undertone, like many darker skin, well, not darker skin, but more reddish, red bone complected people have. And yellow bones specifically have red undertones sometimes as well, just like dark skinned people can have red undertones. But when we talk about red bones, it's more so specific to a certain shade of people with a reddish complexion. But sometimes some people who don't even have a reddish complexion will be lumped in with people who have a reddish complexion because people who are like a caramel, like I said, who are yellow undertoned, will often be labeled with them because our color is basically the same. The only difference is when we wear makeups and jewelry, we wear different types of jewelry and makeup. But other than that, we basically overlap, you know. So that's just what I wanted to put in here. It's just I've noticed a lot of the time people have a different idea of what red bone is, and they like to think it's like basically white passing. From everything that I've seen, as far as the definitions of red bone, most of the time it's not someone who is white passing. More of the time it's more of a caramel hue or someone who has a reddish brown hue. And sometimes both are considered red bones, you know. And sometimes only one is considered a red bone, you know. It just really depends. But in my experience, it's never been someone who is very light skinned. And that's the thing, that I feel often when the definition is confused, then the context of certain situations that red bone and reddish complected black women are brought up in, people get confused and maybe even offended at sometimes. Just because they don't really understand what exactly a red bone is. You see, a yellow bone is someone without the brownish hue. That's what the last slide shows you. That's a yellow bone. Someone who is not brownish in their tone and completely has their yellow undertones on display. That's a yellow bone. So that's a big difference, as you can see, between a red bone and a yellow bone. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Bye.